Cut off my controlling aunt and desperate cousin after they tried to pressure me into giving my unborn baby to them. I'm a 24-year-old woman, currently 8 months pregnant with a baby girl who already means the world to my partner and me. The start of my pregnancy should have been one of the happiest times of my life, but it's been overshadowed by my aunt and cousin, who have made this journey far more stressful than joyful. My aunt, who stepped in as a motherly figure after my mom passed away when I was very young, has always been a big part of my life. She's a very religious Mormon, someone who clings tightly to tradition and a certain rigid sense of morality. As far as she's concerned, a child needs to be brought up in a devout, proper home, with both a strong, providing father and an attentive, loving mother. She's convinced that, because my partner isn't Christian and both of us work full-time, we'll raise our child confused and misguided, lacking any real sense of identity or stability. It's absurd, but she's genuinely worried my daughter might go down a dark, immoral path without the foundation her own nuclear brand of faith supposedly offers. Lately, she's taken this viewpoint much further, insisting I should give my baby to my cousin, who has struggled with infertility for 5 long years. My cousin and I have always been close, a bond I treasured and tried to support, especially as she's dealt with her heartbreak. But now, my aunt is pushing the idea that my cousin and her husband could give my child a better life, a quieter home, a part-time working mother, the right kind of religious values. I had to make some boundaries, for my safety and sanity. I moved to a new home and blocked both my aunt and cousin on almost all forms of communication. My partner and I even married privately, just to make sure they couldn't have any control over my medical decisions. My aunt is relentless. She even showed up to my old apartment, just to scream and argue about what's right for my child. She pretended to be nice, tried coaxing me to a church cafe for a talk about the baby, but I refused. I ended up hiding in my apartment until the manager got her to leave. Not only that, my aunt began rallying her church friends against me, who now bombard me with hostile texts and voicemails. My cousin, on the surface, has been quieter. She suffered a devastating stillbirth last year at 30 weeks, a trauma I can't even comprehend. Since then, she's joined all kinds of mother-baby groups on social media and, through family gossip, I've heard she was banned from several for harassing young mothers and widows, trying, in her desperation, to find a baby to fix her family. Now the rumors swirl that she's waiting for me to give birth, hoping I'll just hand my baby over as if that will heal her loss. Both my aunt and cousin have convinced themselves that I'll be overwhelmed with motherhood, especially given grad school plans and the challenges of working life, as if I'll simply admit defeat and give more to the baby by letting my cousin become her mother. You're still young, my aunt says flatly, you can have another baby later. I refused to speak to my cousin until after the birth, to minimize my stress and protect myself. I loved her growing up, sometimes even more than my aunt, but her recent obsessive behavior has left me shocked and afraid for my safety. Planning a wedding celebration for next year, a proper party, since our ceremony was so private, should be a happier time, but it's clouded by the question of whether I can ever safely have my aunt or cousin at future family gatherings without drama. I feel grateful for strong support from most of my family, but sometimes I wonder how long that support will last, and what my relationship with my aunt and cousin will be once my baby is actually here. I want to return to family gatherings, but I can't risk my child or my own peace. I grew up watching children and family treated as prizes for those living a supposed godly, devout life. Any perceived shortcomings meant judgment and, too often, the community offered little real help when someone was truly struggling. My church facilitated adoptions where the birth mothers, young, single, ungodly, were pressured and frightened into giving up their babies, supposedly for the children's own good. Their babies were then given to infertile Mormon couples, people eager to save an innocent baby and give the mother a chance to fix her life. That legacy still scares me, and it's made me deeply wary of adoption now. Update 1. This is a small update, but things have been tense. I reached out to my aunt and cousin's church leader and opened up to him about the situation, about my aunt's relentless harassment, about my cousin's painful trauma and grasping at the hope she could adopt my baby, and about how much stress they've caused me. At first, he brushed it off as nothing more than a personal family conflict, suggesting counseling, as if it could all be easily resolved. I explained in detail how my cousin is still struggling with her loss, and how my aunt keeps feeding her false hope about adopting my baby, only increasing both their attachment to something that is never going to happen. He finally seemed to understand a bit and promised he would speak with them both. When I talked to him again, he said my aunt and cousin wanted to talk to me, that they were upset I cut off communication and moved away. I told him plainly, their actions towards my baby forced me to make those choices. He also mentioned that my cousin was working with a church counselor and looking into adoption, since further IVF won't give her a child. I absolutely stressed that I am not giving up my child, yet he still tried to nudge me into reconnecting with my cousin and aunt, asking for personal details and pushing to set up meetings or counseling services. I stood firm that I'm not comfortable with any contact right now, no matter what. The church leader kept insisting I should at least call my cousin, and even said he'd meet with my aunt since I'm too scared. That call ended with his reassurance that he'd handle it, but I still don't feel satisfied. In fact, it feels like he's being dismissive, more concerned with resolving things on their terms than actually understanding my position. I made sure not to give him any personal information, none. I have no intention of meeting anyone in person. My partner and I have already gotten legal help, and thankfully, we don't live in Utah. Right now, I just have to wait for what the church leader says next, and keep protecting myself and my baby every day. Update 2. I made the decision to unblock my cousin and reach out to her directly. I sent her a message explaining that my partner and I were keeping our baby, and that this was not open to debate. I encouraged her to seek professional therapy if she hadn't yet started, and made it clear that I was not comfortable with her, her husband, or my aunt being a part of my child's life. She hasn't replied, and honestly, even if she does, nothing she says will change my mind. Our relationship will never return to what it once was, and she will not be involved in my child's life. His comment really rattled me, especially after I'd opened up about everything happening and my anxieties. I'm not just too scared, I'm terrified for my family's safety and well-being. I'm worried about what could escalate, about my cousins and my aunt's expectations and actions, and so much more. All of these fears are very real and deeply valid, given everything that's happened. That response truly bothered me. Update 3. After the rush of the last few months, and all the sleepless nights, the birth, and juggling new projects while recovering and caring for my baby, I finally have time to breathe and share what's happened. I'm 25 now, and my little girl is almost 4 months old. Time is flying. She's thriving and fills our home with so much happiness. I love our daily walks and watching her grow, it's happening so fast. I'm also gearing up to return to work, searching for a new job, and making plans for our future. Since my last encounter with my cousin and my aunt, things were quiet. My cousin didn't answer my message. For a while, her side of the family just went silent. Then, out of the blue in August, my aunt called me from a new number asking how I was doing and if I'd had the baby yet. She sounded concerned, not just for me but for the baby too, since I'd stepped back from most of my family and left my old job. Of course, I asked how my cousin was doing. My aunt told me that they're now trying to adopt a baby through their church connections, but so far, nothing has worked out, probably because they're just starting. I pressed about whether they'd spoken to a real adoption agency, but my aunt said my cousin's husband's past might cause problems. That caught me off guard, I had no idea. Then she launched into a rant about the decreasing, white, birth rate and how people actively deny themselves parenthood. She asked if I was really sure I wanted my baby, and she even got worked up about 9th-month abortions. She's staunchly pro-life, with no exceptions. I told her, again, that I was keeping my daughter. She wouldn't let it go. She started telling me how my cousin is getting old, even though she's just in her early 30s, and how her house is still empty. She pushed me to at least share the joy, begging me to let my cousin be part of my daughter's life and spend time with her. I shut that down immediately. Their past behavior has made it impossible for me to trust them around my baby. I told her plainly, I feared that my cousin would try to step into a mother's role, or let herself believe it. Was her right? My aunt insisted that my cousin was trying to get better and had been attending church counseling. I still refused. Then she changed tactics, asked me if I knew anyone looking to give up a baby or resources on adoption. I told her I didn't, and cautioned her and my cousin's husband to be patient and careful on their journey to parenthood. She emphasized over and over how important parenthood was to my cousin and her husband, how they deserve children by now, and how it was important for their reputation since all their friends are reaching that milestone. She began prying into my own family plans, pushing about when I'd have my next child and demanding to be involved next time. The longer the call went on, the more her old, manipulative traits showed through, and I got completely worn out by it, but thankfully she ended the call herself to attend some other activity. Luckily, my sister keeps me updated on everything happening with my aunt and cousin, and all the family and church drama. Everything my aunt said checked out. According to my sister, my cousin's mental health is better than it was at her lowest, but she's still suffering from deep depressive episodes. She often feels empty without children and is devastated by our broken relationship. My cousin and her husband are even looking for an IVF doctor abroad, desperate for a miracle since their options here are dwindling. My cousin apparently still sees my baby as something she lost, but seems to take comfort in her belief that God will give her children soon and has been seeking forgiveness for her perceived sins. With Thanksgiving just days away, we're skipping out on celebrations with my side for obvious reasons. I'm preparing to return to the workforce after the holidays, with childcare plans in place and every precaution considered. The future honestly feels bright, despite everything. I'm grateful for all the support I've received and all the love poured into me and my little girl. Update 4. It's been 6 months since my last update, and I wish I could say things have stayed peaceful. My daughter is now 10 months old and absolutely perfect. She's crawling everywhere, babbling constantly, and has this infectious laugh that brightens even my worst days. I found a great job that allows me some flexibility, and we've settled into a wonderful routine as a family of 3. But of course, nothing stays quiet for long with my aunt and cousin. In February, I started getting strange messages on social media from accounts I didn't recognize, always young women with very few photos, asking about my baby, commenting on old posts about my pregnancy. At first I thought it was just random spam, but then I noticed they all seemed to know specific details about my situation. One even asked if I was still planning to keep the baby and mentioned my cousin by name. I blocked them all immediately. Then last month, something happened that made my blood run cold. I was at the grocery store with my daughter when I noticed a woman following us through several aisles. She kept her distance but was clearly watching us. When I got to the checkout line, she approached and started gushing over my baby, how beautiful she was, how lucky I was, the usual small talk. But then she said, "Your cousin Sarah talks about her all the time. She shows everyone pictures." I froze. My cousin doesn't have pictures of my daughter. I've never shared any with that side of the family, and my social media is locked down tight. When I asked what she meant, the woman got flustered and quickly left. I was shaking so badly I could barely get my groceries into the car. That evening, I called my sister. What she told me made everything make sense, and made me angrier than I've ever been. Apparently, my cousin has been telling people at church that she's my daughter's spiritual godmother and that we're working through some temporary family difficulties. She's been showing people photos she somehow obtained, my sister thinks either through mutual family members or possibly from my old social media before I locked everything down. Some people at church apparently think my cousin is actually helping raise my daughter or that we have some kind of shared custody arrangement. The worst part? My aunt has been encouraging this. She's been telling people that I'm struggling as a young single mother, I'm married, and that my cousin is stepping up to help family. They've essentially created this entire fiction where my cousin is already playing a motherly role in my daughter's life. My sister also told me that my cousin's adoption efforts fell through completely. The church connections didn't work out, and legitimate agencies have been put off by her husband's background. Apparently he has some kind of criminal record that my family never discussed. They've also exhausted their savings on failed IVF attempts, including the treatments abroad that didn't work. I'm honestly terrified about what this means. The fact that my cousin is telling people she's involved in my daughter's life, combined with her increasingly desperate situation, feels like she's building up to something. I've already contacted a lawyer about a cease and desist letter, and we're looking into getting security cameras for our house. My partner thinks I might be overreacting, but he didn't see the look in that woman's eyes at the grocery store when she mentioned my cousin. There was something almost hungry about it. Like she was studying my daughter for someone else. I keep thinking about what my aunt said months ago about my cousin feeling like my baby was something she lost. What if she's decided she's going to find a way to get her back? Update 5. I never thought I'd be back here so soon, but something happened last week that has completely shattered what little peace we had left. My daughter just turned 1 last month. We had a small celebration with just my partner's family and a few close friends. She's walking now, getting into everything, and her personality is really starting to shine through. She's curious, fearless, and has this way of melting hearts wherever we go. But that's exactly the problem. 3 weeks ago, I was at the pediatrician's office for my daughter's routine checkup when the receptionist mentioned that someone had called earlier asking about our appointment times. When I pressed for details, she said a woman claiming to be my sister had called asking when baby Emma was scheduled to come in. Here's the thing, my daughter's name isn't Emma, I don't have any sisters who would call about appointments, and my actual sister lives across the country and has never been involved in my daughter's medical care. The receptionist realized something was off when I explained the situation. She pulled the call log and found that the woman had also asked about my daughter's vaccination records and whether there were any custody restrictions on file. My blood went cold. I immediately asked them to put a password on my daughter's file and flag any unusual requests. That same week, my neighbor texted me a photo that made my stomach drop. She'd taken it from her window. My cousin's car was parked across the street from our house. My neighbor didn't know the significance, but she thought it was weird that someone had been sitting there for over an hour just watching our place. When I saw the license plate in the photo, I knew for certain it was my cousin. I called my sister that night, and what she told me explained everything. My cousin's marriage is falling apart. Her husband apparently has been having an affair for months, with a woman from their church who recently had a baby. My sister said the irony is devastating my cousin, watching her husband fawn over another woman's child while their own efforts to have children have failed completely. They're headed for divorce, and my cousin is about to lose the house, her support system, and any remaining chance at traditional motherhood through her marriage. But here's where it gets worse. My sister also told me that my cousin has been telling people she's pregnant again. She's been posting cryptic social media updates about miracles and prayers being answered. She even started wearing loose clothing and declining alcohol at church functions. The problem? My sister knows for a fact that my cousin had a hysterectomy 6 months ago due to complications from her last failed IVF cycle. My partner finally understands how serious this situation is. We've installed security cameras and changed our daily routines completely. I no longer take my daughter to the same places twice in a row, and I've started working from home more often. We're documenting everything and building a case for a restraining order. But last Friday, something happened that proved all my fears were justified. I was at the mall with my daughter, letting her play in the indoor playground while I grabbed coffee. I always position myself where I can see her, but there are other parents around and it usually feels safe. I looked away for maybe 30 seconds to answer my phone, and when I looked back up, my daughter was gone. Pure panic. I've never experienced terror like that, scanning the playground, calling her name, asking other parents if they'd seen where she went. A mom nearby pointed toward the main corridor and said she'd seen a woman carrying a baby in my daughter's outfit heading toward the exit. I ran. I'm not even sure how I moved that fast, but I ran through that mall screaming my daughter's name. Security got involved, they started checking cameras, and I was about to call 911 when I heard her crying from the bathroom area. I found them in the family restroom. My cousin was sitting on the floor, holding my daughter, rocking back and forth and crying. She was whispering things like, "Mommy's here now and we're going to be okay, sweetheart." My daughter was crying and reaching for me, clearly scared and confused. When my cousin saw me, she didn't try to run or make excuses. She just looked up at me with this heartbroken expression and said, "She feels so right in my arms. Like she's supposed to be mine." She handed my daughter back without resistance, but then she said something that still haunts me. "I've been having dreams about her. God keeps showing me that she needs me." Her real mother. Security detained my cousin until police arrived. I gave a full statement, pressed charges for attempted kidnapping, and they arrested her on the spot. The whole thing was captured on mall security cameras, so there's no question about what happened. My aunt has been calling nonstop since my cousin's arrest, alternating between begging me to drop the charges and screaming at me for destroying what's left of our family. She keeps insisting that my cousin just wanted to help and that I'm being cruel to someone who's clearly suffering. She even had the audacity to suggest that maybe my cousin deserves a chance at motherhood more than I do because she wants it more. The court date is next month. My cousin is out on bail, but there's a no-contact order in place. Her lawyer apparently wants to plead down to a lesser charge, claiming mental health issues and the stress of her failing marriage as mitigating factors. I should feel relieved that it's over, but I don't. I keep thinking about what she said, that God told her my daughter needs her. What if she still believes that? What if this arrest just makes her more desperate? My daughter seems okay, thank God. She's resilient and bounces back quickly at her age. But I can't shake the image of my cousin holding her, talking to her like she was hers. The scariest part isn't what she did, it's how natural she looked doing it, like she'd been practicing. Update 6. It's been 4 months since the mall incident, and I honestly thought the worst was behind us. My daughter is now 14 months old and thriving. She's saying her first words, has taken her first real steps, and lights up every room she enters. The court case wrapped up 2 months ago with my cousin pleading guilty to attempted kidnapping and receiving 2 years probation plus mandatory psychiatric treatment. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Last month, I started noticing my partner acting strangely. He'd been working late more often, taking calls outside, and seemed distant whenever I brought up anything related to my cousin or aunt. When I asked about it, he'd brush it off as work stress or say he was just tired from our daughter's sleep schedule. But something felt off. The truth came out in the most unexpected way possible. I was doing laundry and found a business card in his jeans pocket, for a family counselor, but not just any counselor. It was Dr. Patricia Holmes, the same therapist my cousin had been court-ordered to see. When I confronted him about it, he broke down completely. Apparently, my cousin had been contacting him for months. It started right after her arrest, with her sending messages through mutual acquaintances, then eventually finding his work email. She'd been telling him that I was unstable and paranoid, that the mall incident was a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. She painted herself as the victim, a grieving woman who just wanted to help her family but was being persecuted by her mentally unwell cousin. But here's the part that made my blood run cold. She'd been slowly convincing him that maybe, just maybe, she could be a positive influence in our daughter's life if given a supervised chance. She told him about her therapy progress, shared certificates from parenting classes she'd enrolled in, even sent photos of a nursery she'd set up in her new apartment just in case we ever needed help with childcare. My partner swore he never believed her completely, but admitted he'd started questioning whether I was being too harsh. The breaking point came when she suggested they meet in person to discuss what's best for the baby. He agreed to one coffee meeting, thinking he could convince her to leave us alone permanently. That meeting happened 3 weeks ago. According to him, my cousin seemed different, calmer, more rational. She acknowledged her mistakes and talked about how therapy had helped her understand boundaries. She even apologized for the trauma she'd caused our family. But then, toward the end of their conversation, she made a proposal that left him speechless. She offered him $50,000 to help her gain access to our daughter. Not custody, not adoption, just regular, supervised visitation rights. She claimed she'd come into some money from her divorce settlement and wanted to use it to make things right. She told him she'd been working with lawyers who assured her that, with the right documentation of my paranoid behavior and her rehabilitation progress, she could potentially petition for grandparents' rights through my aunt's connection to our daughter. My partner said no, of course. But the fact that he'd hidden all of this from me for months, that he'd even entertained meeting with her in the first place, has shattered something fundamental in our relationship. I feel like I can't trust anyone anymore. The worst part? I think my cousin planned this all along. I think she knew exactly which buttons to push with him, knew that as a man who hadn't witnessed her behavior firsthand, he might be more susceptible to her manipulation. She'd studied us, learned our dynamics, and found the one crack in our united front. Yesterday, I found out why she suddenly has money to throw around. My sister called with news that explained everything. My cousin's ex-husband didn't just have an affair, he'd been embezzling money from their joint business accounts to fund his relationship with the other woman. When my cousin discovered this during the divorce proceedings, instead of reporting him, she used it as leverage to get a much larger settlement than she deserved. Essentially, she blackmailed him into giving her everything. But that's not even the most disturbing part. My sister also told me that the woman my cousin's ex-husband was cheating with? Her baby died of SIDS 3 weeks ago. My cousin has been attending the funeral, the memorial services, even started a meal train for the grieving mother. She's positioning herself as a support system for this woman who just lost her child. I don't think my cousin is done with us. I think she's just getting more sophisticated in her approach. The direct confrontation didn't work, so now she's trying psychological warfare, attempting to isolate me by turning my own partner against me. My partner and I are in emergency couples counseling, but I'm not sure our relationship will survive this. Every time I look at him, I see someone who could be manipulated by the very person who tried to steal our child. How do I trust him to protect our daughter when he couldn't even protect our family from being infiltrated? I've hired a private investigator to document my cousin's activities, and I'm considering relocating again. But running feels like letting her win. She's already cost me my extended family, my sense of safety, and now she's threatening my marriage too. Sometimes I wonder if she'll ever stop, or if this is just my life now, constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next move in whatever twisted game she thinks we're playing. Update 7. I almost didn't write this. I've spent so long wishing life could just be normal, instead of always having some new crisis triggered by my family. But the truth never stays buried, and things have exploded in ways I never expected. You all deserve to know what's happened, especially since parts are stranger, sadder, and more complicated than even I thought possible. We didn't move. That was the first decision. I felt very strongly, especially after the counseling, that running again would hand power right back to my cousin and my aunt. My partner and I sat down, ugly cried through some excruciating conversations, and made a pact: we would bring everything into the open. No more secrets, no more omissions, no more protecting each other by hiding the worst of it. Even if every ugly thing came to light, at least it would be our decision, nobody else's. It was agonizing. My trust was paper thin, but he stepped up. He gave me access to everything, from emails to messages. I gave him the files from my lawyer and Pi. We even let our new couples counselor read the full case summary. Terrifying, but, in a strange way, it forced us onto the same team again. The Pi uncovered more than I could stomach. My cousin had not only ingratiated herself with her ex-husband's new partner, the grieving mother, let's call her A, but was quietly sowing division between A and her partner. In text messages, screenshotted and shared by a sympathetic church friend who'd grown suspicious, my cousin dropped concerned hints about A's mental state, her suitability as a mother, her need for a break. She even suggested that A and my cousin get away together for a spiritual retreat, leaving A's surviving toddler in the ex-husband's care. The whole thing chilled me. It was pure grooming, subtle, insidious. My cousin presented herself as angelic support, all while angling for a vulnerable child to attach herself to again. What she didn't know was that A, already suspicious, started confiding in another church member, who, unbelievable but true, read about our story on Reddit. That's right. Someone in our town connected the dots and reached out to me via a throwaway account, sharing pages of screenshots confirming what the Pi had already raised warnings about. She warned me that my cousin had started acting obsessed with A's living child, telling people at church things like, "God took my own baby because he knew I'd be needed for this one." The woman asked me point blank if I'd experienced similar claiming behavior. I felt sick. I told my lawyer everything. Here we were, two mothers caught in the crosshairs of one woman's endless grief and fixation. My lawyer immediately drafted emails to A's attorney. She'd begun legal proceedings for sole custody post-tragedy anyway, relaying what we learned. But things, somehow, still managed to spiral. It was Easter Sunday, my least favorite holiday these days, when my aunt left an envelope wedged in our mailbox. Inside was a rambling, 8-page letter. The gist: she forgave me for the police involvement, she understood the pain of separation, she didn't blame my partner for being confused by my toxicity and fear-mongering, but now was the time to love one another, as the Lord requires. The kicker was a full-page handwritten visitation proposal, with a schedule for my cousin to reacquaint herself with my daughter, now scrawled over in red pen by my lawyer with the word no in capital letters. The language was lawyerly, almost manic: conditional offers, promises of supervised time, even a suggestion if the mother is unwell or unavailable for any reason, my cousin is ready to step in and provide a loving, faith-based home. This felt like escalation. I took it straight to my attorney and the police. They agreed it read as both a veiled threat and an attempt to establish paper for a custody or grandparents' rights case. But, here's where things turned. When my lawyer reached out, he was contacted by the church's own legal representation. Apparently, they were now deeply concerned about recent reports from multiple church members about my cousin's boundary violations with A's family and with several vulnerable mothers. The upshot: the church launched an internal inquiry. My aunt and cousin were suspended from teaching Sunday school and barred from church property during children's events. It's a huge blow in that community. For my aunt, the social exile was worse than any court mandate. It would be almost funny, if it weren't so damn tragic. Then came the final straw. My cousin's ex-husband filed for an emergency restraining order against her, citing emotional instability and dangerous obsession with, yes, his new partner's surviving child. Suddenly my cousin's narrative, that she was turning her life around, collapsed publicly. Church friends who had tiptoed around her started sending us, and my lawyer, supportive messages, apologizing for not seeing it sooner. More than one said she'd pressured them for baby time or hinted at possible adoptions that had been rebuffed. And my aunt? She called, not to apologize, but to rage. She left 6 voicemails in a row, the last of which was nearly incoherent with sobbing and fury. She threw every accusation at me, that I was colluding with enemies of the church, that I'd destroyed God's plan for our family, that my bitter heart had put my cousin on a path to darkness. I saved them all as evidence and blocked her. I'd like to say this is the end. It isn't, not really. Because family doesn't end when you cut the umbilical cord of obligation. It just changes its shape, sometimes becoming a shadow you keep an eye on forever. The strange, beautiful part is this: for the first time, I feel lighter. I look at my daughter, chattering away to her favorite stuffed dog, and realize, she's safe. I'm safe. My relationship with my partner is still scarred, but it's real again. We've each chosen to rebuild because love, unlike blood, is an active decision, every single day. I may never fully relax. I double-check that the security system is armed at night. I still scan faces at the playground. But I'm not hiding. My cousin and aunt have finally run out of allies and plausible narratives. Their world has closed in on itself, built on lies and desperation, while mine is broader than ever. Friends, chosen family, therapists, lawyers, and even unlikely Reddit strangers who cared enough to warn me. I still grieve, at odd moments, for what I lost. But the horror story has mutated into relief, into hope flickering at the edges. Maybe now, my baby's first memory won't be running. Maybe it will be something different entirely: joy, safety, laughter, something I thought was lost in the wreckage of what my family became.